Well, welcome everyone to the Speaker Launcher Teleclass series. I'm your host, Jane Atkinson, author of The Wealthy Speaker 2.0 and soon to come, the Epic Keynote. My guest expert today is the Vice President of BX Worldwide, a global source for speakers and entertainers. She's an author. She's been in the speaker, bureau, and production business for more than 25 years. And I just need to note that she's one of my best buds in the speaking industry. Welcome, Kris Young.
Hi, Jane.
So happy to have you on the phone with us today, and we're so happy that you're feeling better.
Oh, amen to that, sis.
Everyone who was listening to, let me announce the topic. The topic today is catapulting your fees, part three. So Joe and I did part one with the intention that we would do part two with Kris, and then Kris got ill, and so we're actually doing part three now. Now, Kris, you have been obviously in the business for a long time. You've always worked differently than other speakers bureaus, really like digging in with your clients on the content of their programs. Tell us what you think has been lacking in kind of corporate events where speakers are concerned.
Yeah, well, I'll just say one sentence about why I work differently because it didn't make sense to me that bureaus were the last people, executives or meeting planners talk to. We wish we weren't involved up front like we should be when it comes to designing content for an event. So that was what drove me. I ended up in the production side of things, still booking speakers, acting as a bureau, but the process was different.
Right.
And I would say what's been lacking in corporate events, I'm going to answer that a little differently by saying that I think there's been a very important shift, and mostly because of the economy crisis we just went through, but it's been to, if we're having a meeting, it better be worthwhile.
Hmm.
And we know what we need to have happen, and we're going into it with that. And if it doesn't, we're probably not getting the budget again. So that created this space that I think is much bigger. There's a gigantic need there. It drove my next step, which we don't need to talk about today, but which is how do we get the vision, that outcome, that content driven outcome out of an executive's head and into a live experience that we like to refer to as corporate meetings and events. And who's going to help them do that?
Right, right.
So, my part of it is to get my brain around what those executives want to have happen. And then when I look to speakers to support, it's like any other experience. You don't want somebody just pounding something in your brain. You kind of want to ease in, kind of go, I'm interested. You got me interested. Now tell me something else. Tell me how I fit. How's this going to work when I go back to work? Is it going to be fun? Does it make sense? So you kind of take them through an experience like that. And speakers are a big part of show me what it looks like out there in a different industry. Show me how that will, here's an example of what that looks like when it works and what it looks like when it doesn't. So speakers become, in my opinion, in this kind of way of thinking and successfully building events that work, it's really less about looking at a keynote for exactly what it looks like every single time, and looking at a speaker in terms of, are they willing to make it about this very specific outcome, about this client, about these people in the audience, and then learn how to. I'm sort of describing what Joe Calloway does right here, but then learn how to sort of lace those things together. Everybody knows what the speaker's content is, or they wouldn't be there in the first place. So I'm picturing us on that pre-event phone call, learning about the whole event and the client. And then the speaker sort of takes a step back at that point and says, hey, here's a good idea. Here's how we can
Hmm.
make, yeah.
Very nice. So they're a partner on getting the return on investment that they need to prove now to their shareholders because of what's gone on in the economy. And of course that word relevance comes back that Joe has been talking about on the last
Absolutely.
two. Now, I think he said that you've probably worked together over 100 times and or maybe hundreds of times, I don't know. And
Seems like hundreds.
how many?
I said I was just trying to make a joke. Seems like hundreds.
Seems like
It's even when we haven't necessarily worked together on an event, we've tossed around enough ideas to turn that into thousands
Okay.
about events and clients and different ways of working. I'm actually serious, but
Yes.
you know,
And that is something. I mean, you guys know each other so well, and I think that that's. I mean, you are indeed our secret weapon, his secret weapon when it comes to why his content has evolved to the place that it has today, and he's doing some of the best work of his life.
yes.
So, why do you think? Because Joe was on the last call, and I didn't get to ask you this question then. Why do you think that the clients love him so much?
Well, there's no one like Joe. And I mean that not just from I'm his friend perspective and have worked with him a long time, but I mean, I think you could ask any client he's worked with and they would say that and do actually often. And they mean it in a very professional way. But I think a couple of the main things that caused him to be that valuable, relevant, effective are number one, he's extraordinarily easy to work with.
Hmm.
You can't overstate that. And people constantly say things to him like, I've never had a speaker offer to do that before, or
Right.
or care about that, or whatever. There's very little Joe, believe it or not. You would think that a speaker should come in and assert themselves, and it's quite the opposite. It's fascinating to watch, but he gets very I don't know if humble's the right word, but in that he puts the client and their objective first, and then gets down to the business of how can my material, my body of work, my way of doing things, help us bring these people, get them to buy in to the overall objective, which might not be specifically the objective of Joe's content, but you know what I'm saying? That
Yep.
those two things marry together, and they talk about format. They talk about whether he's going to be interviewing anybody, whether it's going to be straight, just talking to the audience, all those kinds of things. But I think that when it all rolls up, that clients love Joe and see him as very different because he focuses more on the actual purpose of the event and on those people and where they're at and where they're going, or equally as much as he does on his own content.
So maybe he checks his ego at the door when he starts meeting with the
Yeah.
client, and likable, valuable, relevant, effective. Those are all words that we really want all of our speakers to be aspiring to. Okay, enough of the Joe Love Fest. We'll move we'll move on to some other things here. But you did touch on whether or not he's interviewing someone or what have you. I do think that taking it out of a keynote situation and him interviewing the CEO on stage is absolutely fascinating. Talk about making it about them or making someone else the hero. That
Sure.
has been a big success for you guys as a team, has it not?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as a team and individually. And I think it was just born out of the idea of just what we're talking about here, which is if you put yourself in the attendees' seats and shoes, I guess, you put yourself in that place of the attendee, it's like nobody wants to sit there and hear speech after speech after speech. I mean, I don't know on a good day how many people can stay tuned in more than 20% of the time, and that's probably exaggerating. So it really came from just the idea of let's think about the overall experience. Again, I mean, honestly, I think of it this way. I'm going to draw you a little picture. If you picture a little postage stamp, that's like what needs to happen to have this event be a success. And then back way off to the other end of the ballroom. You know it's there, but you can't even almost see it. But everything you do for that event, every calorie you spend, every dollar you spend, everything that goes in the room, on the stage, on the screen, on the set, way the room's set up, everything has to be about that postage stamp. What's
Mm.
on that?
That's the goal. That's the
That's the
end goal in mind that they've set out. And, another reason for maybe what occurred there is that oftentimes a CEO might not be the most effective speaker,
That's right.
but Joe or somebody else could pull the great initiatives and ideas that they have out of them in a way that's merely more appetizing for the
Yeah,
audience.
that's what I was getting at. So if you need that, one singular thing to happen to make this entire event worthwhile, then you start thinking about, well, then why would we have, Joe CEO up there who is not effective as a speaker? He's got brilliant ideas, but no one's going to get it if
Hmm.
he stands behind that podium and delivers them. So then you start to think about, we need that message to get across. What's the best way to make it happen? We've got Sorry, we're going to go back to Joe again for a second, but we've got Joe Calloway here as a speaker. I know that's one of his skills.
Yeah.
And, I would say to speakers that if there's anything to work on or practice, it's that idea of what else can I do once I'm there that will help, that I can offer to clients. And this is just one example of many. Maybe you're great on camera and there's going to be an aftermarket, video to promote the next event. Maybe it's another breakout session or to help with a Q&A because you're
Right.
really good at that outside perspective thing. In this case, I mean, Joe worked a long time on his interview skills and he definitely got much better at it. But the key with that kind of interviewing is to make the other person look like the star
Right.
and to keep, no matter where the conversation goes, to make sure that you're keeping it, on track for where you need it to end, the outcome that you need. And to
That's
give outside examples when necessary, but really to make that other person look.
right. Right. And I think that that's a great keynoting
Mhm.
example or a great piece of advice for keynoting anyway, is make other people the heroes in your stories and and you'll be gold. It makes you look better, other people
And by
being
the
the
way,
heroes.
that thing
Yes?
you just explained, where interviewing the executive, I mean, I sort of see that as part of, I almost don't take it out of the keynote. So whoever the speaker is, if they're also doing that, I mean, everywhere in the ballroom, it's like,
Hmm.
who cares what a keynote is anymore? I mean, a
Right.
keynote, it's almost become an irrelevant term.
All
It's
bets are off.
That's right. I mean, I'd rather hear 5, 10 minute presentations that are slamming than 1 hour or 90 minute, keynote.
You
So
know,
if executive or salespeople or customers become part of that, then that really becomes whatever everybody else used to refer to as the keynote.
let's talk about trends like that. The TED Talks certainly have shifted, and YouTube has made us all have incredibly short attention spans. Are the days of the 90-minute keynote just gone? I mean, is that just too long now?
I hope they're gone.
I hope so too.
I have no attention span. I don't think they're gone, but I think people are, for years everybody talked about doing it differently, but nobody ever did.
Hmm.
And I think now it's not only accepted, I think PowerPoint's starting to go away. In some cases, I've heard just recently that it's even banned at some events. Yeah, and it's like, thank you, because it didn't help us anyway. We can't smoke, you can't see it, focus on what the speaker's saying. There's places for it, but I don't know that the event is really one of them. Maybe an intimate group. But I would say that um, the length of presentations, it's just, we always tell people when we're talking to execs that are planning meetings or meeting planners, you should have the shortest amount of time that is needed to get the message across
Yeah, I agree.
because that's always the most effective.
Okay, so I want to just trying to put myself into the speaker position here and back up on what you just said. So, number one, I should be prepared to do anything from 10 minutes up to 90 minutes because chances are very good, Kris, that their time's going to get cut right before they go on stage anyway. They need to be prepared for that. And then number two, I think what I hear you saying is that in a big screen setting, and let's make it clear, most of the events you work with are large budgets, large rooms. In that setting, you think you'd rather see my face up on the iMag than my pretty little PowerPoint. And so if you do use PowerPoint, maybe we should be thinking about doing it a little bit differently in that type of a setting. Maybe like Steve Jobs type of thing, one word or one visual or something like that with I think your face being on the big screen is really important, don't you?
Yeah, well, it certainly differs depending on the presentation.
Hmm.
You know, uh, and again, the be ready for the 10 to 90. I mean, I almost want to say that depends on the speaker too, because some speakers don't, that's what they have is a great TED Talk.
Hmm.
It's like, so don't stretch that to 90 minutes because you're
No.
going to wreck it.
Yes.
Right? So it's sort of one of those things. If you are a versatile speaker with a lot of content, yeah, I think that makes sense, and that is true, of course, of a lot of the people we know and work with.
And a meeting planner who's smart, if you
Yeah.
say to them, where I really shine the brightest is in 30 minutes. If you said to me as the meeting planner, well, I'm going to have you do 90, okay? I would think, okay, you're not really getting it here. Like you're not allowing me to do what I do really well. So
Right.
I think we really want to work with people who understand that. And
Well, and again, if you can, this brings back to the that's what happens. What you just said happens a lot.
mhm,
But that's where, in my opinion, the speaker probably didn't do a very good job earlier on of making it about them. So that when you get to that part of the conversation, it's, well, here's what I feel would be most effective for this particular event because, as opposed to getting back to, I do best in 30 minutes,
mhm,
I do best in 1 hour, I do,
right,
I.
right, right,
She doesn't care when you start talking I.
right.
What they care about is their event. So if you can keep it focused on that, then that conversation, of course, the speaker's still directing it half what's best for the event, probably half what they know they're best at, because in truth, that's what's best for the event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the goal is really to really be thinking about them first and then try to guide it as best you can. So let's kind of get into some logistical stuff. Let's say that you're uh, thinking about your event, you've got your postage stamp idea, and you're starting to put things together. Share with us the process of what you might go through when you're trying to ascertain who's the best speaker for that role.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll just take one very specific example. Let's say it's a 250 person meeting in it, attendees, budget, overall budget. Now, this doesn't include hotel and travel or food. It includes all the production elements. So it's about $400,000, and their speaker budget is probably 20 to 50.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm just going with they want one speaker. I just did three of these, so that's why it popped into my mind.
Okay.
Um, so the process is, first of all, spending most of the time nailing down why are you having this meeting? What's this about? What's going on? What happened last year? A real kind of overview of where they are going, what they need, what success will look like if this event is successful, how those people will, what behaviors will change, very specific things like that. And then we get down to what do we know for sure has to happen in that, who's speaking, how much time do they need,
Hmm.
what executives are going to be on stage present, all that kind of stuff. Do they need any videos produced and what role will they play? And then it gets down to, is there room? Does it make sense? And I always challenge them, which everybody gets a little tiny bit upset about because they don't like it at first. But I'm really being sneaky because I want to know why they want a speaker, why they think it's important, what they want that person to do. And if you just launch right into it, we end up answering all the wrong questions, having the whole wrong conversation.
They
So
might say, well, we've always had a speaker.
I know. Or they might say, well, we like that motivational, thing, that energy that gets into it. And then somebody else will say, I'm not spending $50,000 if all we're going to do is, so you start to hear their conversation and really get down to, first of all, who do I have to please?
Hmm.
who's the guy that's paying, writing the check. And then you can ask some hard questions, and it always ends up being a better conversation. So then I go out and start. It's a little bit of a mystery and hard to explain. I'm one of those people that can see, like, I'm a really great shopper. I can walk into a mall, a sea of shops, or let's just say Nordstrom's, and I can find that one thing no one else can find in probably 15 minutes. It's a little bit like that. It occurred to me a couple years ago that, oh my God, I'm still shopping. But I really do. I know my product very well.
Right.
I spend as much time looking for new speakers as I do choosing speakers for the clients that I work with now. It's it's a really hard part of the job, but it's necessary. So I go out and I think both about content, what they're really good at, how they show up, will they fit with the client's culture,
Hmm.
what are the things can they do besides a traditional keynote. Um, I, yeah.
How would you do your research? Would you say, so I just had this client conversation about making sure that their website was iPad friendly and iPhone friendly. So talk to me about kind of the technology aspects for a
Okay.
speaker. Do they need to worry about all the different platforms? How would
Yeah.
you personally do your research? Would it be on a laptop, an iPad?
Yeah, I would say how I do it is probably different than how the client would do it. You know,
Okay.
of course it is. But I mean, I start with what's in my head,
Hmm.
and it's funny, like we come in different doors depending on that conversation we just talked about with the
Hmm.
client. So if it's clearly content driven for them, I start there, and then I add in all those other things because I know the client's culture. I know that there's gonna be customers in the audience. It's not just employees. I know I think about it's like planning a party. What's it like when you're in the room? Do you want those people all sitting next to each other? Do they should they all even be there in the same room? I mean, I think very detailed about the actual event, not just about the client, the content, and the keynote itself.
Right. And I
So
imagine a lot of your recommendations come from your own,
yeah,
imagination and knowledge of the business and who
what
you
I'm
feel in
telling
your gut is a good fit.
Right. But I will say that I've never done as much research as I am now, which I find interesting. So
Mm.
here, after 25 plus years, and I'm doing more online research than I ever have. For that reason, because it's necessary and because the speech that burns from beginning to end isn't as important. I can't believe I'm saying that out loud when speakers are going to listen to this, but it isn't as important as it used to be. That isn't to say that the content in the speech and the way it's delivered isn't as or more important than it used to be. It's just that they want you to show up and talk to them to help them in most cases, unless it's that purely motivation, inspiration speech. It's more important how it's delivered and that it's really good content they can use.
Yeah.
So that means I'm looking for sometimes different kinds of people than just traditional speakers, which
Right.
is, good for speakers to know. Because,
Well, we've said it before. Clients no longer want to hire quote unquote speakers. They want to hire smart people who happen to speak. They
that's right.
want experts. It might be an author. It might be someone who does not call themselves a professional speaker, which is why, my goal a lot of the times is when somebody comes into my world is to scrape the speaker off of them and
Right.
move them into the expert category because they've done it like all the other speakers have, and that's how they're presenting. So,
Yeah.
okay, so I just really
So
want to go back to,
I throw a lot in the funnel. So, I mean, I'm not kidding. It's
okay,
like I go do a collective search by topic, I, I do a lot of questions when I'm talking to a speaker, or I surround, so when I find one, and through my sort of you become an investigator,
mm-hmm,
really. And then I learn things that send me in another direction, and I do that is until it's really exhaustive. I'll also talk to my comrades, my coworkers, we all have very different areas that we sort of excel in.
mm-hmm,
Renee Strom is spent the last 10 years plus really focusing on international. I'm going to use the word thought leader because nobody really knows what that means. But the point is, they're people that aren't traditional speakers. They're what we that came out of business schools. They came out of some particular area of thought. They have amazing experience, and everybody wants them because of it.
Hmm.
So they're those people that it's very hard to. I don't care nobody knows all those people because they're constantly. It's like the bathtub with the water on and the drain open. They're
Changing.
they're
Right, right.
rolling through. So I do that whole search. I love surrounding myself with people that are way smarter than I am, that know a lot of different things about a lot of different things,
Yeah.
and know speakers and experts and all that. So I check with sort of my key resources, who are just those people that I've surrounded myself with, and we hash it out sometimes.
Right.
Um,
And when talk to me, you said in Vancouver when we did
yeah.
our session at the Global Speakers Summit that you could choose a speaker based on, I think you said 2 minutes of video that you had seen on their website.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean that's all I'm looking at.
Okay.
But yeah, when it comes to whether or not how they show up, their presence, and let's face it, everybody chooses a speaker with 2 minutes or less of video.
Hmm.
And if you don't know that, you should, because I mean, it's very often more like 30 seconds. I hate to tell you that, but it's true. So, before I watch the video, I try to get my brain around who they are and what they do. And usually, I will say that 2 years ago, I would say I never booked a speaker that I hadn't seen present live.
Hmm.
I'm breaking that rule all the time now
Yes.
because of this shift, towards the content. So it's away from what's that expertise on the platform, and the weird part is, it still is that. It's just um, more about what they bring to the table than it is so much about this perfect speech.
Okay.
So let me just say that internet search is huge.
Okay.
It's overwhelming sometimes when I have 4 or 5 proposals due. I know that I've got,
Hours.
yes,
And
hours and
and
hours and
how
hours.
many pages will you wade in on let's say you're searching a leadership speaker, how many pages of Google would you go in before you would give up your effort? Sounds to me like you're going in pretty deep, like 5, 6 pages.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Um,
I'm just
the
curious
the
for
other
search
question
engine for people.
that's interesting is, how many people will I put in a proposal? If it's a leadership speaker and I don't really, regardless of all the questions we asked, I have a client that's just not good at getting that, it's like they almost don't know themselves what they want.
Hmm.
And the only way you're going to get to what's underneath all of that stuff is by showing them, a bunch of different kinds of leadership speakers. So everybody from a Michael Abershoff to, somebody in the political realm, or, the whole spectrum of what does leadership look like? John Maxwell. And I mean, all across the board, Mark Sanborn. And then you get them saying, well, no, because they'll instantly rule them out because they know why they don't want them,
Hmm.
but they can't for the life of them tell you why they do want them. So sometimes my proposals look like that for a reason.
So it's like on the home shows on the DIY networks, they're always showing them the homes that are way, way far out of their neighborhood so that they can get them to go a mile outside of their neighborhood.
So easy.
It's
That's right.
tricky. It's tricky.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to just talk some nuts and bolts here. Fees. You
Yeah.
just said, you're dealing in really massive budgets here, and I know that not all
Oh,
bureaus are dealing in the same level of budgets that you are. But let me just ask you this, so that our clients on the listening end can understand. They're often worried about pricing themselves too high or too low. Well, let me ask you this: if a speaker is too inexpensive in your mind, is it a perception problem? Might you not book them because you think, oh, they can't be very good?
I would generally answer that question yes.
Okay.
It's however, we are always looking for In fact, I just had this conversation with Renee the other day. Um, there are a few clients here and there that are governmental or whatever, and their budgets are lower, and they're longtime good friend clients, and we know they're going to book 10 speakers, but they're going to be budgets of 5,000. I'm just making this up or
Mm-hmm.
under. And it's like, so, and plus we're always looking for that
Okay.
diamond in the rough on their way up.
Someone on their way up. Okay.
So generally speaking, I run into speakers a lot that aren't in the actual speaker category. They don't lead with I'm a speaker,
Mm-hmm.
whose fees are way lower than they should be.
Mm-hmm.
And they just don't know any better. And they get passed over for that reason. So it makes my job very, very difficult, believe it or not, because clients have just been brainwashed. I
There's a
mean,
perception problem.
yeah, you
Okay.
can't be that good if your fee is 10 or under.
Okay. Do all clients want to negotiate fees? In your and let's
Yeah.
understand that this is the world according to Kris, and
Hmm.
so
All
she has a
clients
certain number of clients. So
to
yes.
most clients ask to most clients are smart enough to know that it doesn't happen unless there's a good reason. And that's a big part of our job on this side.
Mm-hmm.
I also think it's important that speakers aren't sloppy about this, but that negotiation, it's the world we live in right now. All the old rules have gone away. However, you're not doing yourself or anybody else or the industry a service unless um, you hold back from negotiating fees unless you have a very good reason.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, those reasons are something like it's local, they're booking multiple dates,
Yeah.
there's huge amount of potential work there, and they've shared that with you, but you need to get that one, under your belt. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
gets get to know each other better, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
you
we
know,
did this list the last time.
okay.
Reasons to have a very strong reasons to negotiate list. Don't just negotiate at the drop of a hat when someone says, "Well, we were thinking a little lower." Oh, okay, no problem. I think, and you're educating your clients on, well, I
Yeah.
really don't think they or he or she will negotiate.
No.
Okay, let's talk about getting noticed. So, this is one of the questions that Dennis asked. Uh, I think you always have a constant radar on for potential speakers, but if someone takes the initiative to approach you, what would their best way of doing it be, not to be ignored, or to kind of how would you sit up and take notice if someone
Yeah.
approached you?
Well, we don't honestly. Maybe this is different than some bureaus, but I don't like to ignore anybody. I'm just going to say that right up front. But I will say that the best way to get noticed is it's sort of there's multiple ways, but it's first of all to be really good. It's second of all to be a very good promoter of yourself. So whether it's through social media, and by that I mean putting usable, relevant, good content out there on a regular basis. Um, Maybe it's a book if you're lucky enough to have that going for you. Um, what else? Word of mouth. We are constantly asking people in our world, so other bureau people, clients even who are part of other industry events and hire a lot of speakers, and maybe they work with some people other than ourselves on some of their meetings. My coworkers, we share every single week. Who are you working with? Why are they good? What did you learn about them? Because we're working with so many new people now all the time, it's really important to share that with each other. So where do they fit? What did they do that was great? Where were they weak?
So
Um,
getting noticed by you, what if they sent you a little query email, hey Kris, is this topic ever going to be of interest to you? Would that be acceptable to you?
um,
Something
yeah,
that's easy for you to respond to is what
yeah,
I'm thinking.
yeah. I think any kind of thing like that, or something that's really simple. I remember Ross Schaefer years ago. His questionnaire, no, his what do you call that? It was like a sheet you would hand out after a program, like a What?
An evaluation?
Evaluation, exactly. That word, that really hard word. But anyway, it was a riot. It was like 4 or 5 questions, simple, simple questions, and you would like circle the answer. I mean, it was so simple, but everybody filled them out.
Yeah.
It was a riot to me. So, I mean, I think that would be an interesting approach. I hadn't really thought about it that way. But as opposed to what they usually do is they sort of back up the dump truck, give us all their stuff, expect us to wade through it and
Sift through
know
it.
them at the back of our hand, 2 days later. And chances are I don't have that free time,
Okay.
in those
So,
2 days.
so let's say that your approach should be when approaching a bureau, it should be subtle and don't back up the dump truck unless asked. Unless
Yeah,
asked for something specific,
yeah,
then
like
you could give more information because we used to call it show up and throw up.
yeah,
And you get tired, you're like, okay. And I have people calling me who think I'm an agent that, they'll show up and throw up on my voicemail and give me their whole life story. And I think,
yeah,
oh, poor Kris, she probably has to deal with
yeah.
20 of
Well,
these a day.
think about it like making a friend. You would never do that when you're just trying to meet somebody.
Right.
It's hi, hello, and you give them a thimbleful,
Yeah.
and then I want more, and then I want more. It's like, you know,
Okay. Now,
calm down.
I think we've covered this, but I just want to make sure is there anything else? Alexander asked the question, how do you pierce the corporate veil? It seems like such a mystery on how to kind of get in there. What would be any of your suggestions for professional speakers to do that if they were going not maybe necessarily through a bureau?
Right. Well, it's like anything else. It's like how do you get business? How do you get it's the same thing for me. But I think that making sure that you're visible out there, in the industry. So um, I'm a social media fan, but I think that people really have to learn how to use it.
Hmm.
And I think, for instance, if you want to get to meet executives who have meetings and events, go join some of those groups on LinkedIn, particularly.
Hmm.
Ask questions that are relevant, answer things that are happening out there, put your content out there in small doses when it really might be effective. So spend more time figuring out where to be and then show up in a really relevant way.
Oh, that's good advice. Good advice. Now, before we wrap up here, let's talk a little bit about technology because, at one point it was, ooh, e-learning's going to replace events and so on and so forth. You have an interesting angle on technology today and events and what their role is.
Well, I sort of tread lightly because who's not a big fan of technology that works and makes our lives easier and makes something more engaging. But on the other hand, I think like a lot of trends, I guess I'll use that word carefully. When it came to meetings and events, it was going to be kind of the savior, the thing that was going to make everything different. And really, what it did in some ways, and I'm speaking now of like, texting to the screen and,
Hmm.
I don't know, all that kind of stuff. It basically became a gigantic distraction. And what I'm a bigger fan of, so I'm not ruling out technology. I'm just saying that I don't think that technology is the point. I think when technology can help, hallelujah. But the thing that I'm excited about is there's a trend towards group learning or tapping into I was telling you this before, the cumulative brain in the room, which really means, if somebody like Joe's on the stage talking to us, I'm going to get a great idea in the audience. Chances are something's going to spark for me, for the guy next to me, for somebody over there, but there's no chance to talk about it. And so you think you're going to save it till you get back to the office? It never happens. It never happens. It's gone. So why aren't we thinking more about format, more about conversational learning at the actual event, building in time instead of time in the hallways to go check your email? How about time right there in the room with the speaker or with each other? I mean, that kind of thing I think is more valuable and needed than whatever else comes under flashy technology category.
I love it. I love it. That is fantastic.
Woo-hoo.
Well, listen, Kris, I am so glad that you're feeling better, number one. And I'm so glad that we've spent this time. We're at about the 40-minute mark, so we've given people a really nice chunk of information here. And I hope what they will take from this is some understanding of how to get into. I think we're doing you a disservice by calling you a bureau speaker booker. That's not really, I think really
Part of my job.
but you're really about corporate content, and you really take it that to that degree further, and thinking about the meeting in a way. That's what I really want people to get is
Yeah.
that their role in the meeting when it comes to that postage stamp might be very, very small. And they have to understand that they are a cog in a much, much larger wheel, and they might spend more on coffee than they do on you.
Right.
There's so many things about the actual budget of the event and what goes into, and I'm hoping that you have just, shortened that learning curve for people a little bit
Yeah.
to really understand their part in the process.
I would say if it's true, and I don't think many people can disagree with this, that there's been a shift in meetings and events in the focus of them, that there is a focus around the actual meeting or event and what's supposed to happen there. Because somebody's going to, make sure that that outcome was accomplished, that the budget, the money was spent well, that people, they've advanced the company's strategy. If all that's true, then it should change the way everybody approaches that meeting or event. So from a speaker's perspective, it's like maybe not just focusing on your speech and your own content, obviously has to be good,
Hmm.
but broadening your perspective, asking better questions of the person who is hiring you and or the people that are writing the check for that meeting or event,
Hmm.
um, will help you become a more valuable piece of it, so that hopefully that's not the only time you're showing up for them. Because if they actually did think you came in and you helped, they're probably going to want to hear from you again.
Exactly. And that, my friends, is the name of the game. Spin off, spin off, spin off. Well, now you see, everybody, why Kris is our secret weapon coming in to help us launch our Masters Platinum event that's coming up in Las Vegas. And I hope that you all have gotten some great benefit out of it. Thank you so much, Kris, for giving of your time today. And for now, we will sign off and say, see you soon, wealthy speakers. Bye for now.